Laura Ingalls Wilder is a name that has become synonymous with the American frontier and the pioneer spirit. Her semi-autobiographical Little House series of books have captured the imaginations of generations of readers, inspiring them with tales of homesteading, resilience, and perseverance in the face of adversity. But while Wilder's books have brought joy and wonder to millions, the story of her own life is not without its share of sadness and hardship. She was born on February 7, 1867 in Pepin, Wisconsin. She was the second of 4 children in her family, with Mary, Carrie, and Grace as her sisters. Unfortunately, Laura also had a younger brother, Charles Jr., who died at only 9 months old. Laura's father, Charles Philip Ingalls, was a jolly man who liked to take risks. Her mother, Carolyn Lake Quinner, on the other hand, was a thrifty and educated woman who was also gentle and proud. Laura's family moved from place to place across America's heartland, and as a result, she had to adjust to different environments as a young girl. In 1874, the Ingalls family left Wisconsin for Walnut Grove, Minnesota. Here, they lived in a dugout house, which was a shelter dug into a hillside with a sod roof. Unfortunately, a grasshopper plague destroyed their crops and left them helpless. 2 years later, the family moved to Burr Oak, Iowa, where Charles became part owner of a hotel. However, the family returned to Walnut Grove by the fall of 1877. In 1879, they moved once again, this time to Homestead in the Dakota Territory. Once the Ingalls family had settled in De Smet, South Dakota, they found the place they could call home. Charles and Caroline would live there until they died, making it a place of many memories for their children. One of the toughest winters the family ever faced occurred during their second year in De Smet. Several blizzards hit the area, blocking the trains from delivering supplies, and the town became cut off from December until May. Laura later wrote about how they had to survive with little food, firewood, and other necessities in the freezing temperatures. Despite the hardships, Laura attended school whenever possible. However, due to the family's frequent moves, she had to rely heavily on self-education. At the age of 15, she received her teaching certificate and taught for 3 years at a small country school. She boarded with a nearby family, and the money she earned went towards her older sister Mary's special schooling. Mary had gone blind in her teens after suffering a stroke, and Laura wanted to help in any way she could. During her time teaching, Laura became acquainted with Almanzo Wilder, who had settled near De Smet with his brother Royal. Almanzo would often come to pick Laura up on his sleigh and drop her off at her parents' home for weekend visits. They courted for a little more than 2 years before getting married on August 25, 1885. After their wedding, Laura quit teaching to help Almanzo farm their homestead. She wrote about this time in her life in her book, The First 4 Years. Laura and Almanzo faced many challenges together, but they persevered and built a life together on the homestead. The Wilders were not strangers to hardship and uncertainty, but they seemed to have more than their fair share. After the birth of their daughter Rose on December 5, 1886, the couple experienced a series of devastating events. In August 1889, Wilder gave birth to a baby boy who tragically died shortly after, an event she never wrote about in her books. Shortly after, Manley was stricken with diphtheria, which left him partially paralyzed. Then, in the spring of 1890, the Wilders' house, which Manley had built himself, burned to the ground. Homeless and drowning in debt, they were forced to live with Manley's parents in Spring Valley, Minnesota for a year. In 1890, they moved to Westfield, Florida, hoping a milder climate would improve Manley's health. However, they returned to De Smet 2 years later, only to leave again due to a severe drought. Their journey to find a new home ended on July 17, 1894, when they started their journey to Mansfield, Missouri. Wilder chronicled their experiences as they traveled, and when they reached Lamar, Missouri, she sent her account of their travels through South Dakota, Nebraska, and Kansas to the De Smet News. This was her first published writing. The Wilder family had finally arrived at their new home, Rocky Ridge Farm in Missouri. The only building they had was a small one-room log cabin with a rock fireplace and no windows. Despite the harsh living conditions, Wilder kept herself busy raising her daughter and helping her husband, who was still recovering from his illness. They had a cow and a pig to provide them with milk and meat. After years of hard work and saving every extra penny, the Wilders managed to purchase more land, totaling around 200 acres. They also acquired more cows, hogs, and chickens. The family started building a new house made entirely out of timber and rocks from their farm, which had 10 rooms, and this took years to complete. Wilder was an innovative farm wife who believed that women contributed to the family's success and were also businesswomen. She started looking into ways to help improve the quality of life for other women in her position. In 1910, she was elected as an officer of the Missouri Home Development Association. This allowed her to speak at various meetings of farmers' organizations where she would share her knowledge and expertise on topics like raising poultry. In 1911, Wilder published her very first article in the Missouri Ruralist. The article was titled "Favors the Small Farm," and it was well received by readers. This success led to more writing opportunities, and Wilder became the home editor of the Missouri Ruralist and the poultry editor of the St. Louis Star. She also contributed articles to other publications like McCall's and Country Gentleman. In 1915, Wilder traveled to San Francisco to visit her daughter, who was a successful reporter for the San Francisco Bulletin. While there, Wilder and her daughter planned a trip to the Panama Pacific Exposition. Wilder wrote to her husband, Manly, that she was looking forward to doing some writing with her daughter so she could improve her skills and hopefully sell some of her work. Laura Ingalls Wilder and her husband Manly had been living on Rocky Ridge Farm for several years, but by the mid-1920s, they were no longer doing much farming. This gave Wilder more time to pursue her passion for writing. Meanwhile, their daughter Rose had moved back to Missouri, built a new house for her parents, and moved into the old farmhouse. Rose encouraged her mother to write about her childhood on the frontier. Wilder took on the task and completed her first autobiographical work in the late 1920s. It was called Pioneer Girl, and it was a first-person account of her life on the frontier from the age of 3 until she was 18. After Rose edited the book, Wilder submitted it to various publishers under her name, but no one was interested in publishing it. Although it contained many historical facts about her childhood, it lacked character development. But Wilder refused to give up. She changed her approach, switching from the first-person I to Laura and expanding the story to include the experiences of her entire family on the frontier. She also decided to target her writing at children. While she sometimes simplified events and created happier endings, she remained true to the people and things that had happened. In 1932, Laura Ingalls Wilder accomplished something remarkable at the age of 65. She published her first book, Little House in the Big Woods. This novel recounted her childhood experiences growing up in Wisconsin and quickly became a hit among readers. The following year, she published Farmer Boy, which told the story of her husband's childhood in New York. Wilder continued her literary success with Little House on the Prairie, which hit bookshelves 2 years later. She followed this up with 5 more books that chronicled her courtship and marriage to Manly, On the Banks of Plum Creek, By the Shores of Silver Lake, The Long Winter, Little Town on the Prairie, and These Happy Golden Years. Harper reissued new editions of all the Little House books in 1953, complete with Garth Williams' new iconic illustrations. By the time Wilder completed the final book in her series, These Happy Golden Years, she was 76 years old. At this point, she and Manly had sold most of their land and livestock, but they still lived on the remaining 70 acres of Rocky Ridge. Unfortunately, Manly passed away in 1949 at the age of 92. Despite the loss of her beloved husband, Laura Ingalls Wilder found solace in the success of her Little House books. Fans from all over the world sent letters of admiration and support, which she tried her best to respond to. Her friends and neighbors on the farm also provided comfort, ensuring that she had all the necessities and that her home was well maintained. But time waits for no one, and Wilder passed away at the age of 90 on February 10, 1957, at Rocky Ridge Farm. She left behind a legacy that would inspire generations of readers and writers alike, and her books continue to be beloved classics around the world. Goodbye and rest in peace, Laura Ingalls Wilder, author of The Little House.